CRO-AM Connections, connecting with Croatian-Americans through conversation and events to share our culture. Today on our show, we have Dino Mattessich. He is a former lacrosse player, coach, and athletic director at the collegiate level for over 40 years. And he is a former head coach for the Croatian national lacrosse team. Dino is from Annapolis, Maryland. Thank you all for joining us today, and dobro nam došli. Today on our show, we have Dino Mattessich from Annapolis, Maryland. He is a former lacrosse player, coach, and athletic director at the collegiate level for over 40 years, and a former head coach for the Croatian national lacrosse team. Welcome, Dino.
Thank you, Marty. It's great to be with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you.
Yeah. This is going to be a fun night. And you're, transparency, you're only like 20 minutes down the road from me, right? But here we were doing this virtually, so that's kind of fun too. Kind of weird, but fun. So we met during the 2024 Croatian Sports Hall of Fame. I think you were you chair of the main committee, or you were leading something there? What was your role there?
Yes, I was chairing the committee for the Pittsburgh portion of it.
The Pittsburgh.
I got involved with the Croatian embassy in Washington. Kind of an interesting story, how I met Pierre Siminovic and Laura Romano, his deputy. I got a call from my sister-in-law, who lives in Annapolis, and she received a call from the president of the Annapolis International Club. And they host dinners, a dinner once a month, and they invite people from literally all over the world and different professions. And so the guy called my sister-in-law and said, "Hey, we've got the ambassador from Croatia, from DC coming, and do you know anybody who speaks Croatian?" She said, "As a matter of fact, my brother-in-law does." So this guy calls me, he says, "Hey, do you speak Croatian?" I said, "Yeah, malo, and we'll make it work." And so we get invited to this dinner, and I thought it was just going to be a small affair. Lo and behold, there were like 250 people there. I mean, it was packed. And so we got to sit at the table with Pierre and Laura and just kibitz back and forth, and it was great. It was a fun night. And then from then on, we were just invited to embassy events, Christmas parties, and that kind of thing. And that's how this whole thing started. So it was kind of interesting. It was fun.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's how I got to know you. And then most recently, we were with the organization, the nfca-cf, working on the finance committee. And I just want to give you a shout out. You've been a great mentor and friend while we were on that organization, and just want to thank you and acknowledge that you've been great.
Well, thank you.
Supporter.
We've all needed some support and help along the way, right? Yeah. So anytime that we can give back, it's certainly a pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you did a terrific job in leading that whole effort, because that was a heavy lift.
I appreciate that. So we have three parts of our podcast, the interview. The first one is talking about your family heritage, your Croatian roots. The second is just getting into you have a really awesome career that we're excited to talk about with you. And then, I know you're retired, or maybe your wife doesn't think you're retired. I know you're extremely busy still. What's Dino up to today? So we'll hit that at the end and then close it out. But let's jump into your Croatian roots. You got a great story.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned earlier, I was born in Croatia, and youngest of six. Two older sisters, and then four boys right in a row. And I was the youngest of all six. So, we lived. We basically lived in Susak, a small little island on the Adriatic. about 10 miles off the coast of Mali Loshin. And I was actually born in Mali Loshin. Now, everyone else was born on the island, but my mother happened to be at the hospital at the same time she was expecting me at the hospital because my father was ill. And the hospital was in Mali Loshin. We had no hospitals in Susak, and there was nothing there. And I'll describe it for you a little bit later on. But essentially, that's why I was born in Mali Loshin in a hospital, which was very unusual at that time. So anyway, Susak is a small, quaint little island, and right now there about 120 people live on this island year round.
Oh.
I mean, no cars, no nothing. I mean, there's not much there. When I was a kid, there was a nurse that would come in. The only way to get there is by boat.
I was going to say, how did you get back?
Yeah, by boat. And so the nurse would come once a week to give us the shots to whatever we needed, kind of thing. And of course, when we knew she was coming, we were heading for the hills because we wanted no part of that nurse. But so it was a quaint little place. And then at its peak, it probably ballooned to about 1,200 people. And as people have left, and younger, the younger population has left and come to the States and or other places, and people have died off. It's really leveled off to about 120 people, and we still have a home there. Okay. Not much of a home, but it's probably a little bigger than this room I'm sitting in my office, in my house. But it was just a great place to grow up. We just, we were just outdoors all the time. We worked. Everybody worked. I mean,
you had vineyards.
Yeah, vineyards, and in fact, at age 3, they made me a little sack. And I would go up to the vineyards, they'd fill up my sack, and I'd carry it down, to the lower part of the island. And then they would throw all the grapes in this big barrel. And then they'd put us, my brother and I, they'd put us in bathing suits and dump us in the barrel. And we literally stopped grapes. Now, I tell that story, and my kids won't believe it, but we literally stopped grapes, and walked around with purple feet for a week or two. But we were industrious, I'd say. And so that's kind of what we did. My father owned the only convenience store on the island.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we were fortunate. We were very, very fortunate. We, at that time, there was not much there. It was post World War II. Tito had taken over. He's developing this partisan army, and they're fighting off the Ustashis, and it was just really a very, very tumultuous time, and so we were fortunate. And I don't recall this, but my brothers would tell me that we'd be sitting there eating dinner, and there would be a knock on the door, and somebody would show up, and say, hey, my family doesn't have any food. We need food. And my mother would go over to the dining room table and scrape, part of everybody's plate, put it on the plate, and give it to the woman who came to the door, or to the man who came at the door, who, had to feed their family. So essentially, my father, because people couldn't afford to pay, my father essentially gave half the store away. And just was people couldn't pay, but how do you turn away neighbors and friends, and that kind of thing? So if I could share with you a really interesting story, something that doesn't happen very often. So the first time I had been back, and I was the last one in my family to go back to Susak, and it was 49 years before I went back.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so we were there, and we stayed in our house. We stayed in the house that we owned, this little house. And there were 5 of us, right? There were 5 of us. My wife and 3 kids. And
so you took your family. You took your whole family.
Oh,
back.
Yeah.
Okay,
and,
that's very cool.
Our daughter had actually was studying abroad in Florence. So she said, well, why don't you come over? I said, yeah, we'll come over, and then we'll go into Susak. great. So here we are, walk into this kitchen. There's 5 of us, and there's only 4 chairs to sit around. And it's just a kitchen, the bedroom. That was it. And, that was it. And so my son says, "Dad, what are we going to do?" I said, "Well, let your younger sister sit on your lap. And everything's good. This will all work out." So then I wanted to take the people that kind of cleaned up the house before we went there. I wanted to take them to dinner. So take them to dinner. At the time, there's 2 restaurants on the island, right? So we go to the fancy restaurant, right? And and this was I'm trying to think. Now this was 2005 or 6, something like that. Yeah, I'd say 20 years ago. And so and they just you don't order off a menu. You go there and they just start piling on the food and the wine and everything. It's just there's no menu. So we're eating away, and this is great. There's 7 of us. We're just having a grand old time. And so I asked for the check. I said, billet, let me billet. And she said, "Oh, okay." She brings it out as 650 kuna, right? Now, we had been in London and we had been in Italy, so the currency was changing. I had no idea how many kuna I had, right? So she says, I said, I don't have 650 kuna. And the woman's name is Barbara, right? She goes, "I know who you are. I heard about your father. I heard about your mother. I know your sister. Next time you come, you just bring me the money." I said, "Well, I'm not sure when I'm going to be back." Right? She says, "Well, then give it to somebody and they'll pay me when they come." She said, "But don't send it in the mail. Well, don't send me a check because there's no bank. There's your check.
Yeah.
And don't put it in the mail because somebody's going to steal the money." So I said, "Whoa." So now 650 kuna, right, all night eating and drinking, was equivalent to about $120.
Yeah.
It's like it was unbelievable. So I said, "No," I said, we're not leaving until I pay this debt. I am not leaving." So I tell the kids we're going to Mali Loshin. We're going to take a boat ride to Mali Loshin. So I know there's an ATM machine over there, and we're going to get some kuna. So we go over, and so they say, "Well, look, the ferry only goes three days a week and once a day. So don't miss it. Don't miss the ferry." We're not going to miss the ferry. We get there 7.
Yeah, one shot, right?
One shot. And so the next morning we get up early, get down to the ferry station. And this is the best part. We get down to the ferry station and it's a long line and the ferry's, about to start boarding. And I get up to the guy, and picture yourself going to a high school football game, right? And the plywood booth with the plexiglass in front, and so the guy says, "Чаотиш, п'ять билетів за путь на Мали Лошин." And he says, "Well, 225 kuna." I went, here we go again. I don't have. I don't have the. I said, "I don't have the kuna." And the guy says, "Well, go. You have a passport." I said, "Yeah, but it's back at the house." He said, "Well, go get it and come back." And I said, "By the time I get back, the boat's going to be gone, and it's not going to be here for another 2 days." And so there's a guy in line. Now the guy in the booth is probably in his 60s, 65, older gentleman, right? The guy behind me in line comes up to me. He pushes me aside, right? And starts yelling at the guy in the booth. And he says, hey, in Croatian, he says, hey, do you know who this guy is? The guy says, "I have no idea who this guy is," meaning me. And he says, and my father's nickname was Tonsida. And this guy says to this guy, he says, "This is Tonsida's son. And he fed you and your family when you couldn't afford to pay." Now, these guys were probably 8, 9 years old when that occurred back then. And for them to remember my father's benevolence, that many years later.
Yeah.
I mean, it brought tears to my eyes, right?
Yeah.
But
How could it
now,
not?
I mean, these guys would remember my father feeding their family when they couldn't afford to pay. And the guy says to me, he says, "You're Tonsida's son?" I said, "Yeah." Boom, 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 rolls out the tickets. He goes, "Here you go." so, so now it's got this commotion. And of course, my wife and kids, they don't understand what's going on. They think a fight's about to break out, right? Because you know how Croatians are. They can, they sound like they're arguing, right? And so I explained to them, and it virtually brought tears to my eyes. And I'll never forget that story, and that occurred. And for these guys to remember my father's benevolence 50 years later, I mean, that's, you know, where in the world does that happen? You know, so anyway.
That's a great story. And now I know why you are the way you are. It runs in the genes, man. It runs in the genes.
Boy, I tell you, it was something. But anyway, so yeah, it was just a.
So did you get the money? Did you go over and get the money? And come back? Oh, yeah. You gotta finish the story.
I'll tell you, I wasn't going to leave. But, you know. So the best part was, while we were still back at the restaurant, she would, you know, I didn't know. So I said, "Well, here." I said, "How about credit card?" She goes, "Credit card?" She had no idea what I was talking about. I said, credit card, you know, like credit card. She goes, "Oh, okay." She goes in the back room, comes back with a spiral notebook, right? Spiral notebook. She goes, "Dino Mattessich, 650 kuna." She was, "That's our credit right there."
Credit. That's credit.
She was willing to put it in the book and just let me go. You know, that was their, you know, just, oh gosh, that was their formal credit card.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's fabulous.
No, it was an interesting place to grow up. And you know, we heard, you know, back then, you know, times were tough, obviously, as I just described.
Yeah.
So my oldest brother, Claude is now 89. And so at age 17, you know, back then, Tito was recruiting for the Partisan Army. And so, you know, he wanted no part of that. Or, you know, family didn't, you know, I mean, we were okay. Yeah. He wanted out. So he and two of his buddies got in a rowboat, a 17-foot rowboat, and rowed across the Adriatic. Took them 3 days to row across the Adriatic. Now, when you did that, your chances of survival were really just you know, if an Italian fishing boat happened to pick you up, they were sympathetic to what was going on in Croatia, right, in Yugoslavia at the time, right?
Yeah.
They would pick up people. They would pick up and take them to refugee camps and that kind of thing. So they're rowing away, and the guy, they had a loaf of bread and some cheese, and a can of what was supposed to be water, but the guy put water in the gas can. So they had no water for like 3 days. Man. They're like rolling away night and day, you know, just you talk about a tough journey. So they make it to they could see Italy, right? They could see Italy, and they go like, "Oh man, you know, we made it." Italian fishing boat picks them up, you know, which of course, you know, they were sympathetic, but they also used the extra hands for their fishing expedition, right? To pull up the nets and all that kind of stuff. So they took them and they put them on board, and when you know it, they're heading out to sea.
They're going to work.
So, here they thought they made it. They thought they made it. They're like, "Oh no, now they go out to sea." But anyway, they eventually made it to Italy, and you know, they got into a refugee camp. And then my brother eventually made his way. Spent some time, 2 years in Italy, and then made his way to the States, to Hoboken, New Jersey, and then and then eventually we made our way. My mother's sister and 2 brothers, right? So my mother's sister and I somehow got on a boat and made our way to Italy. I you know, my mother doesn't recall how it happened and how we got any passports. There were no passports, no paperwork. Somehow we got out.
You got out.
We got out. But my two other brothers. So one brother was in Hoboken, two other brothers, they had to stay behind. Somehow they couldn't get them on a boat. And to this day, we don't know why. But anyway, they stayed behind with my sister who was married. And they, so we're in Italy. We're in Genoa right now. And my brother-in-law goes to the Yugoslavian authorities. He says, "Hey, times are tough. I've got my two kids, my wife. We're trying to make ends meet. I got these two kids. I can't feed them. I can't feed them. Their mother is in Italy, and these kids have to go to their mother. And besides, their mother's dying, so they need to go see their mother. But she wasn't dying, but he just made up a story. Right. Made up a story. And so we met them in Trieste. Trieste is the border city of Yugoslavia and Italy. And literally, we're standing on one side of the tracks, right? And there's on the other side, it's kind of like a bridge. It's almost like a movie, right? And they came across, they dropped them off, and my brother-in-law gave them each a suitcase, tied the suitcase up with rope, and just so that the authorities would look inside the suitcase, right? And these two little boys, they were 8 and 10 at the time. No, 12 and 10 at the time. And so they're carrying these heavy suitcases, dragging them across the border, right? And we finally get home. They open up the suitcases, and they were like a couple pair of underwear, T-shirts, shorts, that kind of thing. And the rest of the suitcase was filled with rakia.
And the important stuff.
The important stuff. But we had nothing else. The rakia was to help to pay for, to give to our cousins who let us stay in their apartment, essentially. So that was kind of like a barter thing.
Yeah.
So we eventually made our way we were in Italy for a year, and then made our way here across the Atlantic. Of all times of the year, like in December, we left December 27th.
Oh, wow.
We arrived in New York Harbor on January 9th, 1959, right? And you talk about a tough journey.
Do you remember that trip?
Yeah.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, it was a trip you can't forget. I mean, there were waves coming over that boat. You didn't know what was happening. I mean, it was a scary time. And literally, 9 days out of 13 days were in rough seas. And the ship was like it was the Julius Caesar ocean liner, Julius Caesare, right? 500 feet this thing was. And
wow.
It's amazing that thing didn't capsize and just, but anyway, we made it. And we're in Hoboken, and the rest is kind of history. But yeah,
did some of your siblings stay back then, or did they eventually get out, or did they stay there?
So, well, my two brothers came. So my mother, sister, and two brothers, and I made it to Hoboken. Okay. My sister and her husband and the two kids stayed back. She was the only one that stayed back. And one of the funniest things, my mother really didn't want to marry me off, because as the youngest of 6, I was her last hope to be a priest.
I was going to say.
She wanted me to be a priest so badly. I mean, she could she was ready to go. She was ready to go see the Pope and say, "You got to make this happen." I mean, it was just stuff.
Yeah, I can empathize. I same. Youngest of 4, and mother was always like, "What do you think?"
Right? Oh yeah.
That's great. So you were in Hoboken, and then you stayed in New York for a bit, right? So what age roughly were you in when you got into New York?
Yeah, so Hoboken, as I mentioned before, is a rough neighborhood. I mean, Hoboken's a mile by a mile. I mean, the city is town, whatever you want. City is a mile by a mile. I mean, it was, and it was a melting pot. You had all kinds of different people there, and if you didn't fly right, or you didn't, walk with the right people, you can get yourself in trouble. So, my mother was very concerned. So we ended up moving out to Freeport, Long Island. So we arrived in January, and a cousin walks into our house. Now, Hoboken, New Jersey, 919 Willow Avenue, 1-bedroom apartment, 6 of us, right? And so a cousin walks into the house and says to my mother, "How old is that kid?" Pointing to me. Oh, he's 6 years old. And his cousin, to this day, I don't know who he is, and I've been wanting to find out who this guy is because he created some problems. Anyway, he says, well, if this kid doesn't go to school, you're going to jail. He tells my mother, if this kid doesn't go to school, you're going to jail. So it's like, next day, I got in my Sunday best, dressed me up, took me to the school, Joseph F. Brandt School, right around the corner. Now, how do I remember that name? That's how traumatic it was.
Wow.
So she's going to take me to school, right? Now, opens the front door, says, you're in school. She goes home. I had no idea what's going on. No idea. I'm walking around the hallways. Eventually somebody just saw me crying, found me crying or something, walked me in.
You found a friend. Yeah, you found a friend.
Yeah. So a guardian angel, somebody was looking out for me. And and that was my introduction to school. That's
wow.
Yeah. So anyway, and then we ended up going to Freeport, and it was like the country. I mean, it was a great place to grow up. It was on the water, and just it reminded us a lot of, not the island, but just being near the water and being around boats and that kind of thing. So
yeah.
Really
well, I think that gets us into. I think you got a story about how you got into lacrosse. You want to share that? I think it was in high school, right?
Well, yeah. So being the youngest of, with my brothers, they had no choice. Wherever they went, they had to take me. It was like that was mom's rule. So it's like I was the little pain in that kid that they had to just drag. So I always competed and played against bigger, taller, faster guys. So in a way, it kind of helped me develop my athletic skills. So I was always if there was a sport to be played, I played it. Because heck, when after practice you get to shower. I mean, you get to take a real shower. At home, that didn't always happen. So it's like, so if nothing else, I got a free shower out of it. Right?
That was the perk. You get to be cleaned.
So anyway, and I competed in sports, but I couldn't take my uniform home because then my mother would know I was playing sports. Oh no, sports
she
were
didn't
like
know.
Taboo. What, play? What are you kidding?
Wow.
You got to go to work. So yeah, my friend's mother used to wash my uniform. Yeah, and then he'd come pick me up, and he'd bring my uniform, and then we'd go off to to the games and that kind of stuff. And that's what we did. And it was. So I was very fortunate. I worked during that the whole time. My brothers had an auto body shop, so we always worked. And after practice, kids would go home. I'm going to the auto body shop to work till 8:30, and then I'm going home, and not much homework got done between 8:30 bedtime, but nonetheless. So just everything. And then as a freshman in high school, I ran track. And really the difference, the career changer for me was this particular situation. So a guy named Coach Crawford was a football coach, but he coached track, and he coached a freshman track team. And so I was a hurdler and a pole vaulter, and I wasn't very good, but it was something to do, and I could take a shower after practice. It was great. And so after the season, he would have individual meetings and tell you what you needed to improve for next year and that kind of thing. So I'm excited to go in there, find out what I can do better so I can, become a better hurdler and a pole vaulter. And so we get in there, and he says to me, he says, well, he says, maybe you ought to go out for baseball. Baseball. Now, the reason I went into track is because I didn't like baseball. It was like watching wallpaper dry. It was, and I was a decent baseball player. We had a regional team, all-star team that was like 3 regions away from the Little League World Series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we were pretty good. And so I get selected for this team. I was a shortstop, selected for this team. Coach comes to my house. Now I had to meet him outside to give me my uniform. Then I had to sneak the uniform into the house. I meet him outside the car and by his car. He says, well, here's your uniform, and you're shortstop, but you may play catcher. so yeah, I figured it out. So the next day we have the game, and he says, well, our center fielder's got a stomach ache, so we're gonna put you out in center field. So, I said, I'm a shortstop. Catcher was a stretch for me. And so lo and behold, I struck out 3 times and made an error. I got a fly ball that I ran in, went 20 feet over my head. We lost the game. And I said, I am never playing baseball again. So here's a track coach telling me how to go out for baseball. I said, I'm not doing it. He says, well, how about lacrosse? I said, well, what's that? He said, well, lacrosse, and, guys with sticks, blah, blah, blah. And so I said, okay, who do I go see? Go see the lacrosse coach. So I go see the lacrosse coach. And the very first game that I saw, it was the first game I played in. So I had no idea. But I was athletic and I could run around. And by that time, I could, catch and throw, that kind of thing. And so that's kind of how it started. So this guy is telling me that I was too slow or too whatever to be on a track team, introduces me to lacrosse by accident. And really, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for lacrosse.
Wow.
I would not be. So you think about things that happen in life and life-changing experience. That was one of them. And that was clearly one of them. And so fast forward, play football and lacrosse and that kind of thing. And so by the end of that first year, I'm on the varsity lacrosse team.
Oh, wow. And, so you're a sophomore playing on, right? You're a sophomore playing on varsity, right?
Yeah. And by the end of the season, and so anyway, so by the junior year, senior year, I was recruited by some schools, but I mean, no one in my family's gone to college. I'm destined to go to work somewhere, probably in the auto body shop. And I was recruited by Navy, the Naval Academy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I said, how much does it cost? Nothing. That's for me. My family can afford that. So I get recruited, and of course my grades aren't good enough. So I have to go to Bainbridge first, the prep school, which was not unusual, back then. And so I got the senatorial nomination. They took care of all the paperwork and everything. And I didn't even bother applying to any other schools because I'm going to Naval Academy. It's free. It's like, so, bags are all packed and ready to go. I'll never forget this Friday afternoon. It is another life-changing, career-changing thing. Right? I'm all packed up. One a suitcase. It was a couple of paper bags. All right, so, they call up and they said, so before that, I had to take my physical, and for two days, you had to take a 2-day physical, all kinds of training stuff. But they sent me to West Point because West Point was nearby. So I go to West Point and they put me up in the Thayer Hotel. I don't know if you're familiar with the Thayer Hotel. It's right on West Point inside the gate. I mean, it is like, Marty, I did not know how to act in this place.
So super nice.
I'm walking in with
super nice
with my shopping bag of clothes and looking around this place. Holy cow! I mean, this is the Taj Mahal for me. And so I said, man, this is sweet. And so I was there for 2 days. But then they found out that I was a candidate for the Naval Academy. The Army guys wanted to beat the what out of me.
Oh, man.
It was. They try to drown me in the pool during the swimming and school exercises. I'm climbing the ropes. They're They're swinging the ropes back and forth, trying to get me to fall off the rope. Everything that was on the paper. They told me what I had to do. I said, I already did this. He goes, oh, no, you got to do it again. So I'm doing it again. I mean, so that's, a couple weeks later, actually probably a month or so later, I'm ready. I packed up, ready to go. I get a call from the coach. Says, we got bad news. You failed your physical.
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking these West Point guys, they fudged up the paperwork.
Yeah.
Just to,
they totally jacked you around. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I said, Coach, there's no way I failed my physical. I mean, I'm in the best shape I've been in my life. And he says, no, you failed your vision test. You're colorblind. I said, colorblind? I said, I can see colors. He says, you failed your color vision test. And to get into the Naval Academy at the time, you had to be able to read, colors, right? Because the communication on the ships is all the colored flags. If you couldn't pass your color vision test, you were done. You were out. You couldn't get in, right? So I said, there's no way. He said, well, come on down. So we drove down. My brother and I drove down on Monday, arrived 7:45 here in Annapolis, took the test, 8 o'clock, 8:05, failed. See you later. Done.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, wow, what am I going to do now? I guess I got to go to work at the auto body shop. What are you going to do? Well, the coach at Maryland caught wind of this and called me. He says, hey, do you want to come to Maryland? I said, University of Maryland. I said, yeah, coach, but my family's got no money. He said, well, I got a full scholarship for you. And I said, okay. He says, you just got to fill out the application. I said, coach, I don't have $50. Because back then, applications were like $50. When you fill out an application, you had to pay the application. It's not like it is today. So I said, I don't think it's, don't worry about it. He said, just come on down. We'll take care of it. And they did. So you think about that. I mean, I could have been at the Naval Academy, could have had a naval career, but instead I ended up in Maryland. I had a wonderful career there.
Yeah.
I was very, very fortunate. And, we won a national championship and just, yeah. So,
but well, let's not skim over that. So yeah, you played there from 71 to 74, and you were on the 1973 national championship, which went undefeated that year.
Yeah.
And you were captain, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
In the 3 years, back then, freshmen couldn't play varsity, so it was a 3-year career. And in the 3 years that I played, I think we lost 5 games, maybe something like that. 5 games. We were good. I mean, we were loaded. We were, it was very, very competitive and just a great experience when you think about. And most college athletes experience this. When you have to. Yeah, you go in and you compete. You put your talents on the line for people to assess and challenge all the time. And whether it's coaches or fans or media challenging, or players trying to challenge you for a starting spot or that kind of thing. And then you learn a lot of life's lessons. If you get knocked down, you can pick yourself up and you start all over again. And the whole idea of teamwork and working with people that are maybe not like you. I mean, we didn't have any Croatians on that team now. So
yeah.
It was a little different, but I was very, very fortunate, very blessed for that opportunity. And
not many can say they were on a national championship at collegiate level. So that's pretty impressive, But that coming out of that, and sorry, got to back up because that year you guys beat your, I think, arch rival because it was Johns Hopkins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a long storied career between Hopkins and Maryland and lacrosse, especially lacrosse, right? So that was another notch on your belt for doing that too. Right?
Yeah, that was a tremendous rivalry, and we had, we were friends. So after games, we'd get together. Win or lose, we'd get together someplace, share a few beers and that kind of thing. And then guys, I play golf. I play golf with guys today that were on that team, on the Hopkins teams that we played against.
Wow.
Yeah, they live in Annapolis, and it's just it's a small group. It's a small, yeah, I mean, you can't go very far and not run into somebody who's identified with lacrosse. And when I moved down here, a guy named Carl Tamalevich was, a friend, from way back. And so when he found out that I moved into town, he said, "Hey, Dino, why don't you and Carol come on over to a game?" He played football in the Navy and played lacrosse. And then he was an assistant athletic director for years. And so, we connected with each other. So we're sitting there watching the game up in this box. And he says, "Dino," he says, "how come you didn't come down to the Naval Academy?" He says, "You love this place." I said, I do. I said to Carl, I wanted to come. And, they told me I was colorblind and I couldn't come. He said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." Now they changed that rule like 4 years after.
Oh, really?
Because they were losing too many people. They were losing too many people. Yeah. And so I said, "Carl, I really wanted to come, but I was colorblind." And he says to me, "Well, Roger Staubach was colorblind." I said, "Wait a minute.
Huh.
Wait, Roger Staubach was colorblind? He got in and I didn't get in?" He said, "You are not Roger Staubach."
Good. Yeah, there you go.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. That's funny.
Oh gosh.
But then talk about coaching. This is where you're coming out of the collegiate career playing, and you're now heading into your collegiate career. I can't say that. Collegiate career coaching. I mean, you've been around. Like you started at Baltimore, University of Baltimore. We call it U-Balt, right? You spent a couple years there. You went back to your alma mater for a couple years there, right? Walk us through a little bit of your coaching career.
Well, interesting enough, coaching was never really a lifelong aspiration. My aspiration was always in higher ed and in administration. So, hence I went to grad school and got a degree in athletic administration, and then eventually a doctorate in educational leadership. And but so that was the path. When I was at the University of Baltimore, what's interesting in life, and especially my life, things just kind of fell in my lap. And in that sense, I was very blessed. I mean, there were jobs that I applied for that I really wanted, didn't get. And then next thing you know, something falls in your lap, and there you are, kind of thing. And so that's what happened at the University of Baltimore. And I really didn't intend on getting into coaching, but I got a call and said, "Hey, you've been recommended for this job, blah, 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 blah. Are you interested?" "Yeah, I don't have a job." "Yeah, I'm interested." I like to work. I've been working since I was 3 years old. So anyway, so that's kind of how that happened. And so when I took the job, so I was instructor and coach at the University of Baltimore, and for 3 years. And then I got a call from Maryland saying, "Hey, would you be interested in coming here?" And it's a full-time job. They never had a full-time assistant, but it's a full-time job. Half the job was in human resources. And I thought, and so it really fit into, my wheelhouse in terms of the experience that I wanted to get. So I literally, I went from head coach to assistant coach, albeit assistant coach at a major program. But really the motivation was to get into human resources and higher education. And there was a mentor there, talk about another experience, like career changing. There's a mentor there. And a guy named Joe Joyce, who was the director of human resources on campus, and he took a liking to me, liked my work and some of the things I did. So he said, if you want to get out of coaching, I've got one of our directors is going to retire, and I think we could groom you for one of those director's jobs, manager's jobs, manager of employment, classification, or, benefits. They had different managers for all those different departments on the campus. So I was really intrigued by that. And so one thing led to another. And then the head coach resigned, and once again, it kind of fell in my lap. So then I became the head coach, and I told the athletic director, it was almost like, you have to do this for your alma mater kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he was right. I mean, that school did a lot for me. And so I said, okay, I'll give you 3 years, and then I gotta move on, because my wife was starting a family at the time, and she says, if you want to start a family, you got to get a real job, because back then lacrosse coaches didn't make any money. I mean, made very little money, right? So in fact, I called my mother. She was living in New Jersey at the time in Cliffside Park, and so I'd call her, once a week. And it was Sunday. She would only let me call on Sundays in the evenings, because the telephone rates were cheaper after 7:00.
Wow.
So don't call me before. She wouldn't pick up the phone. If I called at 6:45, she wouldn't pick up the phone. I mean, she was like, she's, oh, no. And then I finally get her, and she was like, okay, we can't talk too long. Ma, let's just talk. Don't worry about it. She said, well, it's going to cost me a lot of money. No, I didn't call collect. It's not going to cost you anything. It's going to cost me. It's okay. So here's this woman. She says, well, what are you doing now? Do you have a job yet? I said, yeah, well, I'm the head lacrosse coach at the University of Maryland. She goes, what? That's a job? This is quote, they are paying, wait a minute, how much are you paying to play with those kids? I said, no, Ma, I'm not paying. They're paying me. She goes, somebody's paying you to play with kids? What's the matter with those people? She was like, what are they doing over there? I said, Ma, it's the University of Maryland. She goes, what? She didn't get it. She didn't get it. It's like, you got to.
That's not a job.
That's not a job. Come on. When are you going to grow up and get a real job? It's like, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
But,
so that's a good term, because then you do get into administration, and you got a long career there. I'm just going to rattle this off, and we'll come back for you to talk about it. But 12 years at Towson, another local large university. University of Maine. Then you went to UConn in 2000. You were Maine for 5 years, UConn at 2001. And I think you were there for
12 years.
12, yeah. And then off to Hofstra. And so let's talk to your career through that period of time.
It was just it's the old adage, do a good job, keep your nose down to the grindstone, and just keep plodding along, and people recognize your good work. And that's essentially what happened. I mentioned it earlier. I had applied for jobs that I thought would be good jobs, that I thought I would like, and didn't get them for whatever reason. Just didn't get them. And but then something would fall in your lap, and that's essentially what happened. At Towson, and then did a good job there, and then I got a call from Maine, University of Maine, and I said, would you be interested? We're looking for a number 2 guy, CFO. We've got some compliance issues here. And at that point, I had developed a reputation in the business as like a change agent, a fix-it kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of those things, like where, and there's always problems in college athletics. I mean, they've been problems. They're just more magnified now through social media, but there have always been challenges in college athletics. So they had some compliance issues there and that kind of thing. And so I said, I'm not going to Maine. I'm not crazy about the cold weather. Well, just come on up and visit. So, and bring your wife while you're at it. We want her to come too.
We're going to work on her too while you're up here.
And that they did. So so when you know it, they invite us up there for homecoming. Well, the campus is buzzing. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Big, parade, games, and then they have a beautiful concert hall there. They take us out to dinner, take us to a concert. And so we get home, we get back to the hotel that night, and my wife says, she goes, man, this is pretty sweet. She goes, I think I said, dear, This is called recruiting. It's not like this all the time. We're not going to be doing this all the time, And so we went back, and I had to call and tell them, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I got a good job where I am. I'm good. And they kept working at it, and finally it came to be. And I tell you, Orono, Maine, it was a great place for the kids to grow up. Great. We never locked our house.
Oh, wow.
We lived there for 5 years.
That's crazy.
Almost 6 years. Never locked the house. In fact, one of the places we didn't know where the key was. We had friends. One time the friends would call us, "Hey, we're going to Bar Harbor, and you're about 45 minutes away. We're thinking, can we stay with you?" I said, "Well," friends from Maryland. And I said, "Well, we're coming down to Maryland when you're coming up here." I said, "But you can stay at the house. Just stay at the house." He said, "Well, yeah, cool. Where are you going to leave the key?" I said, "We don't have a key."
What key?
I'll let my neighbors know. And just that somebody's coming, so they don't call the cops or something. That's the kind of place it was. It was a great place to. It was just too damn cold. I mean, it was cold. And so anyway, we got things turned around. Won a couple of national championships there, and then I get a call from University of Connecticut, because at the time they were in the same league as we were in football. And, the facilities at Maine when it first got there were not good. In fact, our stadium was condemned. So I'm on the job 3 months in the football stadium. This is like in March. Fire marshal walks in and says, "Hey, Dino," he says, "we can play football next year." I said, "Your stadium." He goes, "No, you're not. No, it's condemned. It's like an old erector set style stadium, steel." I said, "You can't do that. We got football season." He goes, "You got to figure something out." So we were going to play at Bangor High School. We were going to play all our games on the road, or we had a baseball field that we could kind of convert a little bit into a football field. And so, so we got the contractor. So they tore down the stands on one side, and they built the stands on the other. And we were able to open up the stadium in time, put a new turf field, and the whole bit.
Wow.
And we did that like in 3 months. And so
that's crazy, Dino. That's crazy.
People in Connecticut were like, "How the hell did you do that?" I don't know. When you got to do something, you got to do something. You just can't sit around. And so they remembered that, and they were going through some changes. They wanted to take their football from 1AA to 1A football and into the Big East. And so they created this position, and they called me. At the same time, financially, they were going broke and didn't know it. I didn't know it either.
No.
So, so they created this job, and literally doubled my salary. I was like, "Holy cow, man, you can make some money doing this stuff." So double my salary, and we're down to Storrs, Connecticut. And that was a fun job. I mean, well, I should say fun. It was a challenging but kind of interesting job. And the period of this 5.5, 6 year period in Maine, across all our teams, was the most success they had in their history of all the teams, men's and women's sports. The most cumulative success they had, and that was kind of our goals. That developed the facilities, and then UConn was the same thing in a 12-year period. And my job was to make sure we had the resources, the financial and human resources, to move from 1AA to 1A independent, and then into the Big East, and then involved building a 40,000 seat stadium and an indoor practice facility, football complex. And we managed to get all that done. And in 10 years, in the 10th year, my 10th year, we went to the Fiesta Bowl in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Nice.
Yeah, and that was people couldn't believe that. I mean, it was just like, whoa. But well, we had a good team. We just had a good team, and we had a good plan, and just worked our tails off.
Well, you did a little bit more than that, because I read, and I can't remember, may have been one of your, may have been a Hofstra publication, I think, that the UConn, this era that you were there at, it was one of the most successful eras while you were there, with multiple national championships in both men's and women's basketball, bowl victories in football, and that's the Fiesta, I think, Big East championships in field hockey, soccer, and baseball. So it's more than just a stadium. Yeah. You had some wins up there.
Yeah, we had, in fact, down in my basement, I've got a bag. It's in a bag. Yeah. And, I don't pay much attention to it, but, occasionally when the grandkids come or somebody comes to the house, Carol will run down to the basement, take out the bag, and she puts all the championship rings. I've got like 16 championship rings.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, yeah, put that back in the bag. Put it in the basement, would you? I mean, it's like, it's a little embarrassing. I mean,
no, it's not. You should be proud of that. Can we get a picture of those rings, please? Can we please get a picture of those? I'll call you. I'll call Carol up.
Yeah, they're in a bag, so it's like, I'll bring you the bag and you can play with them, and then give them back to me. Give them back to me when you finish playing with them.
That's impressive. That's freaking crazy, Dino.
Yeah,
but also, while you were there, if I get my timing right, you went back in the coaching a little bit. And it was I think they call them club leagues now, but was it a club league then, or was it?
It was club. Yeah, it was college club, and it was an alternate to for schools, universities that wanted lacrosse but didn't have it as a varsity sport.
Okay.
For gender equity reasons, and and financial reasons, and that kind of thing. And so, my son played when we lived in Baltimore. He played, but then stopped playing, and then he got into ice hockey, and ended up being a pretty good ice hockey player. Yeah. Do we have time for a story? Quick story?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I'm traveling with football, and so he was a good basketball player too. I mean, he's 6'4", and I thought he had a future in basketball and lacrosse, and probably lower level D1 or maybe like a Division III. He's a pretty good player, pretty good athlete. He was a quarterback on the Orono football team, that kind of stuff. But anyway, besides that point, he wants to give up basketball for hockey because all of his buddies were playing hockey. He'd never played hockey. We bought him a pair of skates when we moved to Maine, and he taught himself how to skate, how to play. We had a pond in the back of the house. Well, he cleared out the snow, skated on that. High school had an outdoor rink. He skated every day, and his buddies. So I'm thinking, oh man, if he gets too good at hockey, he's going to give up basketball. He's got no future in hockey. I mean, hockey is a tough sport to crack, and especially in college. There just aren't that many opportunities. But basketball, there are. So I made him play both sports. I said, you're not giving up basketball. You want to play hockey? You got to play basketball too. So literally, we would take him from basketball game, you change in the car, go to hockey practice, or hockey practice, change in the car. You're just
because they're the same season. They're running the same season.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so but I was afraid if he gave up basketball, he wouldn't go back to it. And then by the time he was a freshman in high school, he's not making a hockey team. He's not making a high school hockey team. I mean, that's not happening. So I figured, he'll get tired of it, and he'll play basketball in high school, and we'll see what happens, kind of thing, right? So I'm away on a football trip, and my wife at the time, my late wife Kathy, says, and he was going to have his tryouts, the hockey tryouts. He's all excited. He's had his hockey tryouts. I'm thinking, okay, pal, don't get too excited. Do the best you can, but don't. I'm preparing him for the letdown, right? And so I forget where I was. I was away with the football team. And she goes, Kathy says, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Yeah, I'm sitting down." And I said, "How did the tryouts go?" She goes, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Is he really bummed out that he didn't make it?" He goes, "No, he made the team. There were only 3 freshmen that made the team." And I'm thinking to myself, "What's wrong with that coach? That guy doesn't know what he's doing. That kid doesn't belong on that team." So most parents would be pissed that the coach didn't select their team. I'm pissed because the coach selected.
Right.
Darn if he didn't make the team. And he played all 4 years. I told him, I said, "Okay." I said, "Now you can't do both in high school." So I said, "I'm not getting up at 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning, nor is your mother, to take you to practice. We'll come to your games, but we're not doing this practice thing. We're not doing it." And for the 3 years, because his senior year, we moved to UConn. And so for 3 years, he never missed practice. He was never late for practice. We never had to wake him up. And he always found his own ride. I mean, that's how dedicated he was to that.
He found a passion, right? That was his passion.
Yeah, found a passion. But so so we go to this thing, and the coach says, "Yeah, I don't see you around much, or I don't, you don't call me, or you don't ask me questions about." I said, "Look," I said, "I don't talk to coaches. I don't talk to my kids' coaches. You're coaching. I got nothing to do with it." I said, I'm not one of those helicopter parents. We're not helicopter parents. You coach him, and if there's a problem, you let us know. But if he's got a problem with you, he's going to deal with you, not dealing with me. But the coach is worried that I was pissed about something because I never talked to him. But I'm not that kind of guy. I'm just going to well, anyway, just the opposite of, I guess I've been around long enough to see how it works. But so anyway, I went to lacrosse practice. So Brian was playing club lacrosse, and so it was a beautiful afternoon. And I go out to practice, and I'm still wearing, I took my jacket off. I was wearing a tie and shirt. I just come from the office and had to just swing by. And guys are just practicing by themselves. And no coach. So one of the guys comes over to me. He goes, "No, Brian didn't say, hey, that's my dad." Oh, he's hiding in the back, right? So the guy says, "Are you Brian's father?" I said, "Yeah, but I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I don't want to embarrass him." And he said, "Our coach doesn't always show up. Can you coach us?" And that's how I got started.
Wow.
I said, "Okay, yeah, I'll coach you guys." I said, so I went back, I don't know, a couple of days later or something, and just kind of blew the whistle a little bit. I said, "Man, this is I enjoyed it again." It's kind of like I missed it a little bit, but that's how that got started. Again, things fall into your lap and just.
Yeah, but again, you excelled because you took a team that was 4-9 the previous year to a nationally ranked team that went 9-3, and you got 2006 Pioneer Collegiate Lacrosse League Coach of the Year award.
Where are you getting this stuff from?
Hey, it's what we do, Dino.
Yeah, jeez.
Right? You got the award, Coach of the Year, turned the club team around, right?
Yeah, I've forgotten about that.
I've
forgotten about that.
Quite impressive.
That was a good group of guys. They really liked the game, and they were pretty good athletes. So, we'd show up to games, and other teams were not ready for us, and or maybe not as well coached and stuff. So we could kind of take advantage. I mean, it was a kind of lacrosse where you could just kind of in the pregame. just watch the other team warm up and just figure out, okay, I think we can do this. I think we can do this. And then I'd go over to the scorers table and say, okay, tell me who the starters are. And I jot them down the numbers and look at them and say, okay, this guy can go left or right. This guy can't do anything. This guy can't, goalie's weak down low or whatever, offside, and, watch them warm up. And then I'd get them together. It's okay, boys, we're going to do da-da-da. It's fun. It was fun. And they really, I will say this, they really captured, they really got into it. And, especially when they started winning, they thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it's always fun to win. Who wants to lose?
It's always fun to win.
Right.
It's not, they I wasn't very happy when we lost, but because I don't like to lose. I still have that competitive edge, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy about it, but I still, and that's why you keep score.
Yeah. So something else happened in 2006 that I found out is that you were the inspiration, or a picture of you, or the inspiration for the 51-cent Canadian stamp issued in 2006 in the commemoration of the World Lacrosse Championship. You got it back there? Is that what you're pointing to?
I just realized it. That's it right there.
Yeah.
So
Bob, just let me say this little blurb. Yeah, Bob Scott.
Yeah.
He wrote a book, and they also used that image on the cover of his book called Lacrosse Technique and Tradition by Bob Scott. Right. And that picture, I just want to give a kudos or shout out to Bob, I think Rothgeber, who took that picture in 1974.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, it was, that was an interesting story. So I'm sitting in my office in Connecticut, and Bob Rothgeber calls and says, Coach, he says, you don't know me, but I just wanted you to know I gave the rights to this picture to the Canadian Postal Authority. So I go, okay, well, what's that got to do with me? He says, well, I gave them the picture, and they may or may not use it on the stamp. You think about it, because the World Games being played in outside of Toronto in 2006. So this was like in January, and I'm thinking, hey, Bob, great. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. I've got to run to a meeting. And, I forgot. I didn't even mention it to my wife, because it's like, come on, And so he called me in May. He says, Coach, it's Bob. I said, yeah, what's up, Bob? He goes, they're going to use it. They're going to use your illustration for the stamp. I said, really? How does that work? He says, well, they took the cover of the book, and they took my image, and they took the Maryland off the jersey, and they put a maple leaf on the jersey, and that's on the stamp. I'm thinking, holy cow, isn't that something? So he says, you're going to get a call from the Canadian Postal Authority. I said, why? I'm not. It's your rights. There's no royalties. You told me. He said, well, you're going to get a call from them. So I get a call from this woman. I don't know, a week later. She says, yeah. I said, yeah, it's me. Blah, blah, blah. Or secretary says, hey, there's a woman, blah, 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 from the Canadian Postal Authority on the phone. Can you speak to her? I said, yeah, put her through. So she goes, da, 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 da. And yeah. I said, really? This is going to happen? Oh, yeah, this is going to happen. I said, wow. I said, what are you going to sell these for? She says, 51 stamps, 51 cents. She goes, how many do you want? I said, well, what am I going to do with them? I can't use them in the U.S. They're Canadian stamps. What the hell am I going to do with them, right? So he says, no. He says, you got to understand, this is like big stuff. I said, well, how many are you going to put in circulation? She goes, well, we're going to put 4 million of these in circulation. I said, 4 million? 4 million stamps are going to be used with my mug on there? She goes, yeah. I said, well, what are you going to sell them for? She says, well, 51 cents. I said, well, how about selling them for 52 cents and give me a penny for each one you sell? She goes, no, we don't operate that way.
It was worth a try.
We don't operate that way. I said, oh, man. I said, so again, I don't think anything of it. And so we're on vacation down in North Carolina. and I'm on the golf course, and my phone rings, and I never pick up the phone on the golf course. And but my father-in-law in Baltimore had been, was not feeling well, not doing well. So I was concerned about it. So when I saw the number, when I saw the 301 number, I picked it up, and it was the writer for the Baltimore Sun. He said, hey, remember? Yeah, how you doing? I'm doing good. He says, you got a minute? I said, I'm in the fairway. My partner's in the woods. When he comes out, I got to go. So he said, how about, he says, well, I'm running a story on this Canadian stamp. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, yeah, there's a story on this Canadian stamp. I said, you can put this in the Baltimore Sun? He goes, the Baltimore Sun. Boom, boom. I said, holy cow, that's cool. He says, well, give me a few lines. So I gave him a few sound bites.
Uh-huh.
I said, okay, I got to go. Boom. So that was a Friday. Saturday, we're driving up to Baltimore, right, from North Carolina. We're vacationing, driving up to Baltimore, the kids. And my phone starts ringing off the hook. Saturday morning. It was in Saturday morning's paper. Marty, I caught more grief about that. My relatives were getting calls. They didn't know anything about it. They said, hey, Dina, about this, They felt silly, stupid, because they didn't know. He said, you didn't tell us. Who do you think you are? Blah, blah, blah. And holy cow. Give me a freaking stamp. Give me a break. And they give me all this stuff about, why didn't you tell us? Or who do you think you are? I said, I'm nobody. I'm a nobody. It's like, give me a break. So we finally get up there, and so Bob arranged a luncheon at the Hopkins University Club.
Yeah, the club. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and with Bob, and so he says, Coach Scott, wants to. The Alumni Association magazine wants to do a feature and all this, and wants to have lunch with you, and at the luncheon take pictures and all this. I said, all right. I said, if it was anybody but Coach Scott, and so I'm on my way to the luncheon, right? And I get a phone call from Dickie Dell. Dickie Dell followed me at Maryland as the coach, right? And he says, where are you going? I said, well, believe it or not, I'm going to the Hopkins University Club for lunch. He goes, they don't let Maryland people in that place. What are you doing? They're not going to let you in. He says, you better have somebody taste your food before you take a bite. You don't know what those people are going to do. And we just laughed and just, so they made a big to-do out of it kind of thing. It was, again, not a big deal. But here's a funny part. There's more fun to this thing. So about a week later, I'm back home in Connecticut, and I'm on my tractor cutting my grass. And my neighbor across the street is a physician, Mick, great guy. We did a lot of stuff together. Just a wonderful guy. Mm-hmm. He comes running out of his house with a newspaper, with a magazine rolled up in his hand. He's going like this with the magazine. He's running across the street. I said, my dog got away. Must have crapped on him. He's pissed, right? So I turn off the tractor. And I said, Mick, I'm sorry. I'll clean it up. I'm sorry. The damn dog. He's going, you didn't tell me. He unfurls his stamp collector magazine of the month. And there's the freaking picture, right? And he's going nuts. He goes, you never told me about this. Blah, 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 blah. I thought we were friends. I said, Nick, we are friends. And now that I know my dog didn't shit on your lawn, we are still friends. So he says, he unfurls this thing. He goes, this is a big deal. And he points to this thing, his first day issue, the envelope thing. I said, Nick, I said, friends, you never told me you were a stamp collector. So I gave it right back. I said, you never told me you were a stamp collector. How the hell am I supposed to know you're a stamp collector? And so anyway, he says, well, you got to give me some of these. I said, Mick, you can have as many stamps as you want. You can have as many first issue envelopes, things, whatever you call these things. You can have, I got a box full. So you can, and he was, it was so funny. But here I'm thinking, Hog went on his lawn. He's pissed because I didn't tell him about the stamp. I didn't tell anybody about the stamp.
That's funny. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
You can't, but you got some good stories. Hey, and so that took you to Hofstra, and then the infamous call from Mr. Kevin Boyles. To talk about the call and what led you to some international coaching.
So I'm sitting in my office one day, and I get a call from this guy. Says, "Hey, is this Dino Mattessich?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You were born in Croatia?" I said, "Yeah." And he introduced himself as a representative of the Croatia Sports something authority or something. I don't know what it was. I can't remember. And so he says, would you be interested in getting involved with the Croatian lacrosse, building it and developing it? A national team. And I thought it was one of my old roommates kind of like pulling my leg. So, this guy's talking. I mean, he was an attorney. He identified himself as an attorney. So of course he's talking to Blue Streak. He's going on and on, and I'm, yeah, okay, yeah. And I'm just trying to figure out, recognize the voice, who this clown is, because I want to give it right back to him. So after about 20 minutes, I said, I couldn't figure out who it was. I said, "Is this legit?" He got pissed. He says, "Is this legit? I've been talking to you for 20 minutes. What when you think this is legit?" I said, "I'm really sorry. I thought this was one of my roommates jerking my chain, kind of thing. No, this is serious. This is, So anyway, that's how I got involved. And he was, at the time, he was calling me from Wichita, Kansas. So he got me involved. And then we had camp there. Then World Lacrosse. I knew some guys that were involved there. So we were able to get a clinic going. We were able to get a grant. And we were able to fast forward our team to national recognition so we can compete in the European Championships in was it 2016? 2017, I think, or something.
2016 was Budapest, yeah.
Budapest, yeah. And so fast forward that, and that was a fast track. I mean, these guys, they were beginners for sure, and it was fun because it was kind of a give back, in terms of not that I had a lot of time on my hands, and or that they have a lot of money. They didn't have any money, and so long and short, it was a give back for me, not only for lacrosse but also back to Croatia. So it's kind of like a perfect scenario for me to kind of get involved and give back a little bit. Developed that thing to the point where we had a pretty decent team, and we finished third in the exhibition league, which was pretty good. And the very first game we played Bulgaria. I was in the stands because the game before us was the next team we were going to play. So I wanted to scout them. And one of the guys comes running up to the stands and says, Coach, we need you. I'm going, oh, man, we haven't even started yet and somebody's in trouble already. So what are you guys doing? And so, it's their tradition that I had to go outside the stadium. And they lined up in two, and the guy's carrying a Croatian flag, and I've got to walk into the stadium with them.
Mm.
I didn't know that, but that's their tradition, and they just very proud and just really proud people to wear that jersey was really. I didn't realize the significance of it, and that was my first indicator.
Mm.
And then, lo and behold, we kind of scraped together, and we're down by a goal with like 2 minutes left or something like that. I said, guys, and I was just saying it. I'm not sure I really believed it, but I said, guys, we're going to win this game. He was like, what? We don't have it, no, we're going to win this game. This is what we're going to do, blah, 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 blah. I tell the face-off guy, and when he gets the ball, because he's a good face-off guy, the ball, I said, don't throw it to our number 10, because our number 10 can't catch it. If you throw it to him, the ball's going to go out of bounds. They're going to get the ball. Game's over. So what does he do? Catches the ball, throws it to number 10. 10 drops it, boom, goes out of bounds. And so I said, okay, Then the other coach called a timeout, which gave me an opportunity to settle things down. I said, okay, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to double the ball. We're going to take the ball away. We get down there, throw it to this guy, or you take it to the goal. We tie the game up with less than a minute to play. Now they're all fired. I said, I told you we're going to win this game. And so, blah, blah, blah. And I said, next, we get the face-off. I said, face-off guy. I said, don't throw it to anybody. Don't throw it to anybody. Just go right down it. Because if you throw it to somebody, somebody's going to drop it. And then we're going to overtime. I don't want to go into overtime because we don't have enough guys to play overtime. So, lo and behold, this guy gets it. And he runs through like 3 people, throws it, goes in the goal. We win the game. We win the game. When you would have thought we won the World Cup in soccer. I mean, they were running around, waving the flag. I mean, it was like, I said, guys, settle down, man. This is like, we got more games to play, But it was the very first game they played. They won. It was, it was fun. Yeah. It was fun. Yeah.
No, it was all. I did read. You did finish third, as you said, but that was a big deal. I mean, I think you started in. You didn't even have a year, right? It wasn't even a year you had to pull that team together,
I think
right?
We started in late 2015, I think, or something, or 2016, something like that.
So
yeah,
you barely had a year, right, to do that. So that's another impressive piece, crazy.
Yeah. So, well, what's interesting about their and the part that and it's got nothing to do with wins and losses, but what was interesting, what I found out is the level of self-esteem was interesting, and to be part of building that up, with guys that didn't think they could do something, and then to be able to do it, because it was almost like they were apologetic if they were good. They weren't supposed to be good. They weren't supposed to be this. They weren't supposed to be that. And that's kind of embedded in the culture there. I don't know if you've experienced it or familiar with it, but it's kind of buried in the culture. It's like, well, it's just the way that, that's just the way Croatia is, and they kind of went about their business that way. And that's one of the things we changed. I wanted to change because I thought it was important. Was, kind of like a laissez-faire, don't take it too serious. No, wait a minute. No. If we're going to do this, and if you're going to put Croatia on your jersey and you want to represent, you don't want to go out. We don't want to go out there and embarrass ourselves, and we're not going to do that. And in order not to do that, we're going to have to work hard. And in order to work hard, we've got to have a more positive approach to what we do. So we spent a lot of time building esteem and building confidence, and because the feeling was, we're not good enough, or we're not supposed to be good, or it was really, really fascinating, and almost too obvious, just but very difficult to overcome. I don't know that we totally overcame that, as we went along, but you could tell that every year that went by, we got more players involved. We had training camps. It was and my son was able to play,
nice.
And so he played as well, and that was part of the motivation to give him that experience and that culture, be part of that, and we were allowed four U.S. players who had Croatian heritage.
Oh wow!
On the team of 23 players. Four could be. The rest had to be native, Croatian citizens. And prior to that, they weren't playing much lacrosse. So it was pretty good shot in the arm. That was a fun project, fun experience.
Yeah, I bet. Do you keep in touch with those guys or some of the people still around?
We were there last summer. We had a family reunion. At the end of that trip, one of the players' family owns a hotel in Zagreb, and I wanted to meet some people in Zagreb, so we stayed there. And then so he called a couple of guys, "Hey, coach is here. Let's get together for dinner." So we got together for dinner and that kind of thing. I'm not in touch or involved as I used to be. My involvement now is in World Lacrosse, which is the national governing body, and I serve on their development committee. And when I started with them in 2015, there were 46 countries in the world that played lacrosse. There are now 93.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 93 countries. So it's really grown, developed, and is going to be in the LA Olympics. It's going to be played in the LA Olympics. And so we're gearing up for that. Lacrosse is really afforded some great opportunities. And, there's some, there are a number of people, you're familiar with the Hall of Fame, Croatian-American Sports Hall of Fame. Yep. And the number of people that have the lineage that have been very successful in sports in this country is a pretty impressive list.
Yeah.
And one of those people is Bill Belichick, and and Bill is so he was very supportive with a grant from his foundation for us when we were going through it. So he's been really, really, really helpful and supportive. And he's from Annapolis, as you may or may not know. Went to Annapolis High School.
I don't think I knew that.
He went to Annapolis High School.
Huh.
Yeah, and he played lacrosse. He played lacrosse at Annapolis High School. Played lacrosse at Wesleyan College in Connecticut. He got inducted into the Anne Arundel County Athletic Hall of Fame.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Experience, but Bill has been a good supporter of Croatia lacrosse and Annapolis and Navy. His father coached in Navy for a number of years. And, his father was he coached here for like 30 some odd years. Yeah,
crazy.
His father Steve.
Huh.
We started this whole part of this story is that there are a lot of Croatians out there that have done well.
Yeah, and there's
and haven't forgotten their roots and have not forgotten their roots.
Yeah, and you're going to be celebrating some more. I know you're still working on the next Sports Hall of Fame. I think in 20. What are we in? 25, 26. Yeah, 26. Right.
Yeah.
Well, Dino, I got to say this: your coach back in college days, he had a saying or a mantra, and I think you lived it. And I think you know what I'm going to say is 3 words: be the best. And I think you shared being the best tonight with us, and it's been fun listening to the stories. I think we could keep going because I'm sure you got a whole host more of stories that you're not telling us. But I just want to thank you. It's been great listening to your your story about Croatian roots, your career, and everything you've done to support and continue to support Croatian-Americans throughout. So just thank you for your time and everything you've done for us.
Yeah. Well, Marty, thank you for the opportunity. And as I mentioned earlier, anytime we have an opportunity to share what Croatia means to us and what Croatian-Americans have done to contribute to this country and to society, and little by little, one at a time, we're able to make an impact in some small way, and you never know how much of an impact you make on somebody, and especially in this profession, because oftentimes coaches and administrators have more influence on kids than their parents do at that time, and we just don't know how we touch somebody in a special way that'll kind of turn them around a little bit. And so anytime that we can do that and give back and send that message and continue to send that message, I think is a big plus. But thank you for the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, happy to do it. And we got to grab lunch sometime. I said when I'm down that way, I'll have to ping you and see if we can get together.
Sure. That'd be great. We'd love to do that.
All right, we're going to wrap up another episode. We want to say thank you, point of follow to all our CRO-AM followers for tuning in, and the Filthy 46 Productions for their editing and production expertise. So until next time, Živeli Hrvati, veliki poz I Bog. If you have appreciated this interview or past interviews, or if you know of someone that we should interview, please feel free to reach out to us via email at CRO-AM Connections@gmail.com. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple, and other podcast platforms, along with watching us on our YouTube channel or following us on Facebook and Instagram at CRO-AM Connections. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember, please support all local and non-local Croatian-American events, wherever they are. Thanks and appreciation to Dino Mattessich for being our guest, Filthy 46 Productions, and as always, our CRO-AM followers.
Follow.